And I can tell you, my whole world felt like it was crashing because
The Joshtantap Show.
Hi guys, welcome into today's show. We're going to talk about money mistakes to avoid in your 20s, and we have Sun Min with us today.
hey guys, how you doing? So a couple of us
Everybody
always talking about early mistakes.
Start of year, talk about something to warn everybody for the rest of the year. Sun Min, I got you in because we are both older generation people, and let's try to find some pointers for our younger audiences. Have you tried before the Chat GPT? Because it's really making its rounds on social media. How awesome, how powerful it is. Have you seen it?
It is amazing. I was messing around with it, and I think I come from the advertising industry. So the creative industry is one of those that are supposedly going to be disrupted by this new tech. So of course we mess around with it. So it's very, very interesting how much it can actually help and contribute to certain tasks.
I tried to input this question also to ChatGPT. What are money mistakes to avoid in 20s? And just to share with everybody, these are some points that it mentioned. Not saving enough for future. I think that's true. That's a kind of a big picture kind of a word. But let's drill down to specifics. And I think we both have some stories to share with you today. Not having emergency fund, I think that's valid, but also very big picture. Raking up credit card debt among some of the mistakes to avoid. Any thoughts on these answers, Sun Min?
In particular with credit card, I think when we look at the Singapore landscape, it feels like we are not as wilder. Maybe some of these findings are very American. So the culture of like racking up credit card debt is very normal for them. But for us, I think it's still manageable. I think the rates of indebtedness to credit cards is relatively okay.
Asian context, right? Like we are ingrained with some savings versus really spending credit too much.
That's right. I think I am wondering is that we have a new trend now, which is not credit card debt, but it's this thing called buy now, pay later. It's still early days. It's a relatively new industry, maybe a year or two old only. And for some of you in your 20s that are just starting to use it, what I do wonder is that in the future, do you become very used to a lifestyle that you will stretch your budget to afford things that you normally would not have bought?
Valid point. Which means like a $300 pair of leather shoes or leather jacket. You space out payments for 12 months. Then you start to snowball this kind of a habit, right? So it's habits that get us into trouble. Usually it's not like one big purchase that gets you stuck. It's usually habits. You build it up over time, and sooner or later you realize you have more than what you can actually consume and afford.
Especially if you're not used to keeping track of things. And it's a new, again, like exciting new thing, right? You try, you get new products, and then next thing you know, you lose track of like, how much I spent already? I'm not too sure. And then, like you said, the habit builds. And if you don't have your base very strong, it can not be a very good outcome in the future.
You don't have your own habits ingrained. If you have it, then you use it to really stretch out your payments and to reduce your costs accordingly or manage payments correctly. But if you're new to the system, then you get hooked onto it and you overconsume. I think that's the point that we are both concerned for the newer generation, young working adults. But I mean, what would be your first point if I were to pose this question to you? Money mistakes to avoid in your 20s. The very first one that struck you the most.
I'd say that going back to again, this is nearly 20 years ago, right after graduation, one of the most biggest mindset I had is I gotta get rich. It's very, very, that hunger was very, very strong then. And I remember seeing a lot of these courses being advertised. And naturally, as a young, hungry adult, I went and spent on those courses. The two, in fact. The first one was a property investing course. So never mind, I don't have enough money. But I thought okay, that's it. I must learn first, must pay a lot of money to learn. So I went and did that. The other one was an options trading course. Of course, they call it investing at that time. And I paid a lot of money. And again, I didn't have enough capital because I was early 20s. But the hunger was there, and I paid a lot of money to acquire so-called proprietary knowledge.
Was it a free course that lured you in at the start?
Oh, yes. Of course, the method is very straightforward. They always got preview. You come for a free seminar. You go to a nice room, then very exciting. And next thing you know, actually, the real information is in this other course.
I was about to ask you, so how much did they review in that free preview? Very little, right? Like kind of thing.
It's a 1 hour preview. So they just tempt you with the highlights, of course.
You know, for myself, I also attended an entrepreneurship course 15 years ago, something like that. I think it cost me $2,000+. I saw my advertisement on newspaper. Like, that's how long ago it is. When
Yeah,
was
exactly. We
your
both saw it on
advertisement, like,
newspapers.
newspaper also, back in your,
Yeah.
wow, now it's all digital marketing. I guess you see Google ads or something like that, or even YouTube ads that come up from what you're viewing this discussion with. So for myself, yeah, I regret spending that money also. This $2,000 could have easily been much better used, because what I went and learned, eventually I didn't really apply too much that can deliver an ROI in that sense. But just like you mentioned about the taste of, hunger, trying to strike it big, trying to learn quickly, and falling for the trap of going for a free preview, and in the end, getting seduced into getting upsold in that sense. If this question was to be posted to me, the first big money mistake in 20s that I'd like to suggest everyone avoid is actually regarding business. My story is I actually started an ice cream business with all of my capital. But actually, there's nothing wrong starting businesses. You should try. If you have some idea, go ahead and try. No regrets. The thing I'm trying to suggest for everyone listening is don't start with all your capital, because the first one is not likely going to turn out well. I think statistics have proven already. My mistake, my folly at the time is I ran with firstly the hawker center, and then I started to get greedy and do big scale. And in there, I took a rent at SMRT that cost me $10,000+ a month. And that actually bled me so much capital, and I had to keep using income to funnel into its saving the business. If you were thinking of starting something today, maybe gravitate towards this idea of a minimal viable product. You can check it out on YouTube. Teaches you how to really think about products viability first before you try to scale and cost yourself so much money. So if you're a young entrepreneur thinking about that, then this is something I'd like to suggest. Any experience in
100% agree.
business part?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think in my case, similarly, but I launched a business, which was an e-commerce business in my early 30s. And I think I would say that my mistake, not so much is like overcommitting in terms of all my capital, but I was just very tempted by the potential gain. And again, for those of you out there who, again, watch YouTube videos and you see a lot of different ads at you, I'm very sure you would have seen some kind of dropshipping type of business. So similar to that, mine was not so much dropshipping, but in the same light, you are tempted with what you can get, but you don't take into account what are the costs. And that was my, I guess we can call it the mistake. Again, I agree with Josh, 100% go and try a business. But I think my additional tip is do take into consideration in a bit of a level-headed way, what are the costs that you need to incur to get whatever so-called potential. So in my case, I did not take into account advertising costs, inventory costs, any form of discounting to compete with competitors, because every day there's new competitors. So all these costs I didn't think about.
Cost and effort, right? Also, sometimes advertisements that are so easy to make e-com, you just set the system running and it milks you money. I think the effort is also understated, right? Any other points that you'd like to share with our audiences on money mistakes?
The next one, I think, is going to be a big one for all of us who's actually, especially if you've survived the 2022. And I'm sure if there are some of the audience here might have been speculating in a very high market in 2021, 2022, maybe you get humbled by certain things. So market speculation is the next topic, which is, I think, is a huge one. And I think for me, again, I started this journey when as I mentioned earlier, going for an options course. So I learned very early on in my early 20s that trading is the way to go. And how you can make money is, again, just every month, I imagine if you make a few percent, by the end of the year, you have how many percent? And then you start to dream very big dreams. It's like from a small amount of money, you can get a lot of money. So what happened after that was, because again, I'm early 20s, I don't have a lot of money. So I spent a lot of time accumulate capital. And then I try and trade. Then, of course, with trading, you win some and you lose some. But net, I lost some. I lost more than I gained. And that cost me time to make all those mistakes. And then I had to regain capital. And then rinse and repeat. So over time, I just time to collect capital, lose the capital, rinse and repeat. I ended up losing nearly a decade of my life trying to make it work. Because I told myself, that's the only way you can make money.
Well, I suspect everyone listening in, right, would be thinking that, no, lah, I'm better than average investor kind of mindset.
Yeah,
Then
exactly.
we all start out with this speculation road and get burned, because when you mention about speculation, I also had to go through the same hard learning process. We think that we can outsmart market. We think we can front run news. We have found a good source for tips, and that we kind of get overconfident on our decisions after some small success. So for myself, I also lost big money speculating when I was in 20s. I remember that period, there was some European crisis. You can check back on history, like 2012, something like that, European crisis. So I was betting that markets will crash. So I consumed all the information that market will crash, and I became overconfident. So I also speculated on it, which is not correct. So again, if you are listening in, don't make this money mistake of trying to compound your wealth too quickly through investing. Sometimes it takes time. It's a slow and steady game. It's a marathon. And if you'd like to start your investment journey, you can actually check out our sponsor for today, who's Webull. Over there, you can actually buy ETFs so that you get broad-based, diversified approach. And this is a good look at how the interface really works on Webull. Not just that, you can actually buy funds that can help you invest into markets all over the world. I'm a user of the Referral platform, and you'll see that they actually charge $0 in commissions, subscription fees, and redemption fees. And if you're new to the platform, right now they even have sign-up promotions. So as always, look for my referral links below to get started today. I have further point to add on money mistakes that suddenly came about, which is to spend not on investing but on gifts, on partners. Gifts could be a lot of ways: expensive dining, like close friends who brought their partners to fine dining, like $300-400 per person kind of thing, just for birthdays. And because he's brought the partner there, the partner will bring him there. So as a couple, they spend so much on gifts, buying a new iPhone and stuff. This is an area that it's best to keep things simple. Don't overspend on partners. Some of them don't even end up, getting married together. That's the irony. So any memories on friends who have actually overspent on their partners and for gifts and stuff?
It's very natural. I think at your early 20s, you're still kind of figuring things out. And naturally, if you like somebody, you want to impress them. Maybe it's not a partner, but maybe it's a group of friends. And everybody wants to belong. I mean, let's face it, we're all human. And I think it's fine to have those needs, but it's just that try to be a little bit prudent and think about yourself as well, and don't end up hurting yourself too much financially in trying to gain the approval of other people.
Very good point. Approval. I like the word, because in a lot of times we spend just to get that approval, a big present, a big dining bill, just to get that approval. It's not really worth it in a lot of ways.
I think I'll add on a new point to this, where I think in terms of early money mistakes, another one that I faced, and this was right when I was 24, 25 years old, I overcommitted to a plan. And I think at that time, being very young, I don't know a lot about any form of investments. I don't even know what a stock was at that point in time. But all I know is that somebody was saying to me that, hey, if you invest in this investment-linked product, it's very good. Again, I didn't know what I was doing, but all I know is that the end amount turned out to be more than about 10% of my monthly salary for 20 years. So believe it or not, I'm still paying for it until today. So, I mean, obviously my income has grown, but at the same time, at that point in time, I just didn't think about it, and I wasn't considering the long-term implication. And then only on hindsight, correct, it was an ILP product. At that point in time, I also didn't know what the underlying asset was, and it turns out it was already like a bond type of asset, which is, again, if you're in your early 20s, it's you might not want to overcommit to more safer asset classes like bonds. If you're younger and actually you have a little bit more of a time horizon, you can afford to take a little bit more risk. And at least that's my opinion.
Was the pitch like you should do this so that you have forced savings? That's why you bought this product.
Exactly.
I've also seen before many who have overcommitted to endowment plans, and the same desire was there, forced savings. Since you have the savings, you use 10%. That's why they bought such a big plan. Where 10%, you can do quite a lot of things. It can be several $100s really. I've also seen people overcommit to whole life plans or even to property. So I think the overriding point is overcommitting, right? When you're young, think very carefully. Things that you pick up that require 20 years commitment, be very prudent on those. You need flexibility. I think that's a common finding through experience. That once you lock yourself into a big plan, house, investment plan, insurance plan, you could get stuck. and you might have some regrets. I have a further point to add to this money mistake topic. I suddenly thought of a time where I almost joined MLM, multi-level marketing. Anyone who's in 20s right now, I don't know if you've heard before pitches, because I'm sure the older generation have been pitched before. We all have in some way. My story is I've heard of actually 2 pitches. The first one was some magnetic mattress, something like that. I could make so much in sales. Then the other one was some aroma medicare, selling some perfume or so. It's always healthcare related, you realize MLM. And it also rounds up a point where to do due diligence on MLM, you can't really do it because the whole atmosphere is so rah-rah. You don't have that much experience to critique what they are mentioning. And very often they bring new attendees to fancy seminars where there is a lot of hype and there is very little chance that you suspect that it's not that easy and stuff. So I would suggest anyone in 20s, if you hear of a pitch on MLM, don't waste time there. It's not likely going to turn out too well. Any thoughts on MLM or not, Subin?
Yeah, it's so funny how similar our paths were. Like similar to you, I think for me, that's one of my earliest memories of like being tempted by money.
Oh.
I think was when I was still in college, and I remember my friend, my classmate was the one that said, "Hey, why don't you come with me to this talk?" And I was like, "Okay, why not lah? Let's see what happens." And like you said, it's impressive. You see a whole bunch of people who are more mature, older than you. They look very successful. In fact, the senior was driving a BMW, and it's like, wow, it's like a big deal, you know. And I don't believe that they are bad people, but they create the image that this is easy and it's all waiting for you. If you just join, that's your life, you know. And I think that kind of temptation becomes like very hard to resist, especially if you're again a bit younger. You've not really seen the world, and you're not really too sure what's out there. And again, maybe all these dreams are very, very, very tempting.
It's a wrong selling, right? Like false selling, right? This selling hope kind of thing. Don't need effort, go in, you can replicate the success of these mentors. And they usually have this culture whereby there's a lot of soft and hard selling, and to really show that, you know, end result is guaranteed once you just come on board, which is hardly the case.
Yeah. And I think for me, I very quickly learned that it was not for me. And the reason why was, I think I got exposed to one of the mentors that it began to show me what I think the mentality was when they approach sales. And it really, and again, this was a unique case maybe. It was kind of like, okay, these people are stupid, man. Let's just try and sell these products. And then it's okay that it's not a very good product or whatever, but just sell any. So I could kind of get a sense that in that case, that person was very unscrupulous. So I also didn't really feel very comfortable with belonging to such a culture. But that's me as a person. So I suppose some of these things you will learn as you get, again, interact with different people with different values, and whether or not you feel like you can work in such an environment.
Did you sound this to your family when you realize that, you know, you're in this culture and they are very hard selling, they don't respect customers and stuff?
Only the friends that I was kind of like within that, again, trying to go into MLM mode, but I didn't tell my family. It was something that I was just kind of like, okay, I don't know if I feel comfortable with it. So I was just kind of checking with certain friends. But aside from that, the decision was mine to stop doing it.
For my case, I remember sounding on my wife now. Luckily, she questioned it because I was really quite hyped up that it could be done. So I'm so thankful that she knocked some sense into me that maybe it's not as rosy as it sounds like. So if you are listening in also and you are being pitched about something, be very careful, because these are things that waste your time, waste your money, and sometimes may even create some souring of friendships because you have to do certain things within the MLM network. Maybe speaking to here, I have a few, or rather a big rounding point that touches on, you know, spending on lifestyle, especially if you're in your 20s, first paycheck or first year of annual income. You have that taste of money. And I realized looking back at the journey, I've seen friends who spend on fancy clothes, fancy drinking nights, partying, fancy travel. And all this is, you know, the first taste of money. You want to kind of indulge and pamper yourself as a thing. So I would like to suggest, don't allow such lifestyle creep to come to the picture. And sooner or later, you realize that actually people don't really care that much if you dress $150 shirt versus a $50 trade. You just need to look neat. You don't really need to spend and look fancy and I don't know what else to impress people. So what are your thoughts on this point on spending on lifestyle?
Yeah, I think this is the one where it's again, I mentioned earlier, it's normal to want to fit in. It's normal to want to belong. But it's just that how far do you go to spend to seek approval? Because you're always tempted by when you see somebody else who's doing the same thing, you want the same thing. And you end up spending perhaps to a degree that, I don't know, you don't know what the other person's finances are. All you know is your own. But if you overstretch yourself and you, again, just for feeling like you want to belong, I think that can put you in a not a very healthy financial situation. And you see this a lot in cars, actually. When I was a young adult, I think some of my friends got into perhaps sales lines. Again, nothing wrong with sales, it's fine. But I think it created, for some of them, a mentality that because I'm in sales, I need to project success. And what happens after that is they buy perhaps fancier cars than they should have bought because they know that that's what's going to make them seem like they're successful. But I see them struggling because you have to make up the money to pay for the car installments.
Sales is, sometimes there are good times and sometimes there are bad times. If you strike a good time and you splurge on a big car, then when the times are tougher and drier, right? Well, then that's where you get exposed if you overcommit to such a lifestyle inflation. What will be a big rounding lesson to me that you have for us to round up today's discussion?
The way I like to think about this is we are all human, we all make mistakes, and that's fine. It's normal in life. There's no such thing as a life without making mistakes. But when it comes to being in your 20s, it's fine to make those mistakes, but ideally, those mistakes shouldn't be ones that are lasting a long time. I think there are a few things to think about, and maybe in terms of tips. I think the first one is that rush to get rich is very natural, very normal, I think, for a lot of people, especially if there's pressure, right? You want to succeed. You see those lists are 30 under 30 or whatever it is, right? You already want to belong and you want to strike it rich. Anytime at all that you are facing an opportunity, whether it's investment, whether it's business or whatever it is, and you feel internally, right, there's that hunger, like, I really cannot miss out. I must make it. I would say that is a signal for you, and not to say a signal not to do it, but it's a signal to pause for a while, calm yourself down, and really try to have a level head and assess what's in front of you. And maybe if it's not you, like Joshua's case, you bring in your partner, have somebody that's level-headed to help you think about what's in front of you. For investing, we talked about that earlier, that's probably one of the bigger mistakes that we tend to make, right? Believing that trading is the only way. I think even if you feel confident and you want to try it, go ahead. Mistakes are there to be made, but perhaps what you can try and do is find that balance, have a long-term investing plan, but then take a bit of that money and go and speculate. Learn for your own self whether it's something that suits you or not. And I can almost feel very confident to say that you will learn the hard way.
Then you believe that lesson, right, that we mentioned. If not, you kind of don't believe it. It's like, children, don't play with fire, don't play with fire. But the best way to learn that fire is both useful and dangerous is when you can really get burned.
Correct. Just don't burn all your money. But go ahead, go and try it out. And then you'll see for yourself just how difficult it really is to be consistent. Because I can tell you this, Josh, I'm pretty sure would have made a pretty good trade at some point. I have made some pretty good trades. But can you do it consistently over a long period of time? That's the real challenge. My final parting point for any young adult here that's watching this is that even though you might have made a mistake already, it's okay. You are young, it's fine, it's normal, and you will eventually get out of it. Because I can tell you this with my personal business mistake before. I lost 6 figures of my income, of my savings. It's a lot of money for somebody at that time, early 30s. And I can tell you my whole world felt like it was crashing because it was 6 figures is a lot of saving, a lot of time invested to save up that money. But you know what? Eventually, I got over it. And I realized that the lessons were there to be learned. And there's light at the end of the tunnel. So please don't do anything rash. You'll get out of it.
Please don't try to recover it too quickly also. There's always time. You still have a long career, right? Still a lot of chances to make active income. And these lessons, just use it for the right reasons. and sharpen the approach, whether it's business, investing, or how you approach money habits. There's always a lot of time. There's still a long journey. And even in retirement, it's always 20, 30 years or so. So form the right habits, avoid the mistakes, and you always survive every crisis. I think that's a good point to end things with. So thank you for watching to here. As always, smash a like, smash a subscribe, especially if you benefited from our discussion. And as always, if you have your thoughts, your experience, leave them in comment sections, because everybody's experience can help someone else. I think that's the most beautiful part of sharing. So Sumin, thank you for sitting in for today's discussion. Together, we wish you Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everybody.
And we'll see you next one.